I know there's already a ton of MagSafe wallet review videos on YouTube, mainly because I watched dozens of them before buying this myself. But I thought it'd be interesting to take it one step further and cut this bad boy open stitch by stitch, just to check out the leather quality, how much of this is actually leather, what the magnet looks like, and overall just what goes into a leather wallet product made by Apple. Okay, let's quickly run through the specs before we get into cutting. Like we mentioned already, this is the iPhone leather wallet MagSafe in color golden brown. It is made in China, designed by Apple. And on the back here, there's not a whole lot of information about the leather quality. However, it does say up in the corner here, natural leather. And natural leather is a pretty nebulous term. It's kind of like genuine leather, where it really doesn't mean anything in particular. Natural leather can be high quality, or it can be extremely low quality as long as it's, I guess, leather. So basically any company that's using actual leather can put that label on their box. It's kind of like the way you see natural foods or all natural in the grocery store. It kind of doesn't mean anything, but organic, that actually has a legal definition to it. All right, no turning back now. Let's get this thing cut open. All right, first cut through done. That was a bit of a struggle. I don't know what kind of glue they used to glue this down before stitching, but man, that stuff was strong. Normally I can just get the knife between the stitch line and cleanly cut it all the way around, but I could not do it. I even cut the leather a little bit on accident. You can see here it has a little metal spring mechanism at the bottom. So I'm assuming what this is for is when you have a card holder like this, especially one that was molded, you can see how it had that bevel on it around the body. So this was molded down to add a little bit of depth to the card holder. Well, if you have the correct amount of card holders, if it's filled up like 3, then this would stick in here completely fine. Like the cards, you could turn it upside down and they wouldn't come out. But if you were just to take it down to 1 card, if this spring wasn't here, a lot of the times, once the wallet gets worn in a little bit and the leather stretches, if you were to do this, the cards would just fall out. It still keeps its shape and keeps the cards nice and secure. That's really cool. I did not expect to see something like this in the bottom of a card holder. All right, let's keep going. Before going into this teardown, I wasn't exactly sure what to expect. I work in the handmade leather goods space, and I've taken apart dozens of wallets and card holders in my day, and I'm really used to just seeing leather, fabric, sometimes some backing, and some metal hardware. And I figured this wallet would have a surprise or two inside of it, but this is way crazier than I expected. So let's take a look at our deconstructed pieces. The first piece here is the back shell. I had to tap out on this one, taking the leather off of this piece of plastic. Basically, there's a hard shell piece of plastic right here, and the leather is glued to it on the back, and I cannot get this thing to budge probably without ripping this leather. So this is a piece of plastic with a leather wrapped on the back. There was a lot of layers to this cutout here, right around the thumb slot. So you had the leather here, it ends. There's a paper backing right here, this white ring. And then some kind of electronic area here that had this copper wiring. This was wrapped on top like this. And I pulled that off, this black circle. I'm not too familiar with this design from Apple. I own Apple products, but I don't have an iPhone right now. So does this wallet actually register something on the phone when you connect it? Because I can't think of any other reason it would need, you know, it has a ring of copper wiring and then some kind of electronic stuff here. But this was glued on like this. And then covering that was this piece here. So this is a piece of fabric. It has a layer of really thin leather around the top. And so this is for when the card holder is put together. It's called a T-slot design. You'll see this a lot in handmade wallets. I do this with all of the wallets I design for my templates. And this reduces the bulk, as well as, in their case, in Apple's case, reduces the amount of leather you need. Because when this is lined up like this, it just looks like it's all leather. But if you were to take it apart like we did, you can see that it's only leather on the top and then fabric on the bottom. Very common. And then at the bottom it has the cutout for that little spring mechanism. This piece was the front. And this actually had another layer to it, another layer of leather, but this gray material that's glued on here, does anybody know what this is? Please put it in the comments. I'm not exactly sure. Is it some kind of blocking material? But this stuff is super flaky, and it was flaking all over my table, so I just kind of tossed it over there. But there was another layer of this here. And this is a piece of leather, a real thin piece of leather, attached to a piece of plastic with this material glued in. And then the last piece, which was the coolest, was the magnet and metal backing. I mean, this thing looks like it's out of Stargate or something. And this was the most surprising part to me. I thought it was just gonna be a standard magnet system. I know that the wireless charger has that ring design when it attaches to the phone, but I didn't exactly expect that to be replicated in the back of a card holder. This is really cool. So here is, I kind of broke it though, the front with the magnet system here. Has that ring of magnets, and it has two magnets down here. And on the back, this is where we saw that spring piece that held the cards in place. Really cool. So your Apple MagSafe wallet is essentially 3 full pieces of leather, counting the one that I tossed over there because it's shedding everywhere. A 1/4 piece of leather, I'll consider this, I guess, a 1/4. And then mostly glue, hard plastic, metal, and magnets, and copper wiring. Next up, I'm going to do a closer examination of the surface of the leather grain using something called a linen tester. This is basically just a 5x magnifying glass. During this step, I'm looking for a couple things. 1, is the natural pore structure still intact? 2, is there any loose grain, bite marks, scars, or any other inconsistencies that are just being covered up with a pigment layer? And 3, is there any evidence this might be a lower quality corrected grain leather? That's where they literally will take a slightly more undesirable section of the leather hide, sand it down so it's all even, and then punching their own grain pattern on top to replace what would look like a natural leather grain design. And while I am having some trouble peering deeply into the grain of the leather because of how much pigment's on top of here, I do believe that I see some of the natural pore structure. Unless this is some kind of extremely advanced corrected grain pattern, it does look like they're using the top layer of a full grain leather to make these wallets. I'm going to put a little droplet of water on both surfaces of these leathers and see how long it takes for the water to absorb, if at all. This leather over here is an undyed and unprocessed piece of vegetable tan leather. Being that it has no top coat whatsoever, the water is going to absorb extremely quickly. So we'll use that as a comparison to measure how well the Apple Wallet leather resists moisture. All right, so it's been about 30 seconds, so I'm gonna wipe off the remainder. As you can see on this vegetable tan leather piece, there's nothing to wipe off. The leather, the water has completely absorbed into the leather. But on the wallet, that wiped off with basically no problem whatsoever. So that tells you that this leather has a heavy layer of pigment and a heavy top coat. So if you were to accidentally spill any water onto this thing, you would have plenty of time to clean it off and have no effect to the grain. Now, for the type of leather this is, I'm assuming it's a chrome tan. I'm just assuming a company like Apple with a product like this is looking for, uniformity and water resistance as their number ones, and a chrome tan leather is going to fit the bill much better than a vegetable tan leather. Normally with a thicker piece of sample leather, I could cut it in half and do a cross-section analysis to get a better idea, but this leather is so thin that it's basically impossible to tell from that. So what we're going to do here is a good old-fashioned boiling water test. Veg tan leathers react really dramatically to heat and water. So if this is a veg tan, this little strip here will probably curl up instantly. And if it's a chrome tan leather, it'll probably just float around on the surface just like that. And for an example, as a control, I'm going to put another strip. This is a natural veg tan leather. So when the hot water touches this, this is going to curl up probably immediately. And we'll just do a little comparison. Okay, so you can see here our control, the veg tan leather, curled up basically immediately as soon as that hot water touched it. Trying to fish it out here. And the piece of the card holder is just kind of floating. It didn't really curl up at all. So we're assuming that that's definitely a chrome tan leather. All right, and that will conclude our Apple MagSafe wallet teardown video. That was a blast. I don't know if you're like me, but I'm endlessly interested in how things are put together, taking them apart, kind of like guessing what the design process was like behind everything, especially for a product like this from a company like Apple, where we have really no insight on how this thing is put together. Looking at how precisely all these little pieces fit together, I would love to see the manufacturing process. How much is just machines like punching and gluing things into place? How much of any is an actual craftsperson doing any part of this work? I mean, even the stitching was so delicate and fine, and the edges were so even and painted so evenly that I can't really imagine a craftsperson sitting there and knocking these things out one by one. Anyway, if you like this type of video and you want to see more of them, you can leave a comment in the comment section below with a leather product, a card holder, a wallet, maybe even a bag that you'd like to see dissected. If it's within some reasonable financial range, I'll take a look at it. Otherwise, you can just like the video. That really helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching.